We call this project the People's Powerhouse because it's really a story about resisting the singular tourist icon in a regional town and instead creating a variety of settings for users. That's important to us as a practice because we exist to enrich the we are on the Millewa-Mallee, on the country of the first Victorian Millewa-Mallee, and 7 hours by car so it's both physical separation, and we specify local materials and suppliers extensively, but it's also very much a psychological separation. Mildurans have a really keen sense of standing alone on their own 2 feet, and the community and council. In fact, we were very clear that Melbourne architecture, whatever that may be, was not appropriate and would not be welcome. The specific context of our site and our brief was really around activating the riverfront. The riverfront is crawling with cyclists and walkers from about 4 a.m. to sort of 7 a.m. Mildura's, on the fringe of a desert, so as temperatures soar and as there's not a lot of amenity or activity to keep people on the waterfront, people really dissipate throughout the day. The CBD is number 6 there, so it's really close to the river, but very much separated because it's up on an escarpment, so a full 2-level changes down to the water's edge. So this project is about activating the riverfront. It's the catalyst for future regeneration of the whole riverfront, but it was also very much about connecting the CBD and the community back to the river. The powerhouse itself was part of a broader settler industrial complex that brought electrification to Mildura. And irreparably changed the river wetlands. As a result, you can kind of see our powerhouse building here, one of the original images, the interior, and the site that we inherited. To the first people of the Millewa-Mallee, this site is culturally sterile, probably understandably, and the broader community really have a bit of a somewhat conflicting real pride in the technological innovation of their forebears and a desire to see Indigenous culture centred in this place. The first people were clear that this project was not a priority for their community, but they wanted its programming to respond to their needs, which I think it does. We inherited a master plan, which is the image on the left there, that sets out the redevelopment for the whole precinct over the next 50 years, including tertiary institutions, medium density housing, a whole bunch of things. And our precinct, which is at the heart there, is really the cultural, social, and it was supposed to also really be a commercial heart for the precinct, to be art gallery and community hub spaces. But from our earliest appointment, which was really at the height of COVID, so I guess intensifying that sense of regional and urban distance, the community were very clear that they rejected this recently endorsed master plan as being an overdevelopment of the riverfront. So they were very clear that they wanted less built form, yet we still had to activate the precinct 24/7. They were also really clear that despite all of the funding coming to drive tourism from all 3 tiers of government, it had to benefit locals. So there was this real shift to local businesses, local social enterprises. And what that means operationally is that we had to have much smaller spaces that were far more flexible and lower cost, lower entry for community groups to engage with. At the same time, we had to not hand council a financial burden to operate this as a small rural city council. So we were supposed to be ripping on with design. This was shovel ready from that master plan, but in fact our project had a bit of an identity crisis. So with council, we really broadened down it in terms of what this precinct could do and who it could serve. They bravely put a placemaker on rather than a council officer to curate the precinct for the next 12 months. And they committed to, I think, a pretty bold vision for a much lo-fi, kind of distributed precinct. So we went from this kind of singular, spectacular object, which necessitates a degree of institutionalisation, I think, to these kind of shifting territories for tribes. So the people program the powerhouse, the people really live in the powerhouse, and tourists who come to see the powerhouse, but really the people who are interacting in the space. And so our design really centred on 3 key ideas that operated a whole bunch of scales, so the precinct scale right down to the kind of interiors. The first is this idea of shifting from an industrial to a kind of sensorial approach. So the powerhouse itself has a scale and a presence and thermal performance, of course, of an industrial building. An early move was to reinstate what's called the boiler house building, which is highlighted on the AXO. So that was the powerhouse's companion in the original complex. and we've reinstated it as a kind of ghost of its former self. It really anchors the powerhouse and gives it a sense of scale. And those two vast roofs then gave us an opportunity to turn this extractive complex into one that was more restorative. So vast solar arrays and batteries on site means that this powerhouse of electrification is now doing it renewably. And around these two kind of mammoth structures, we disaggregated the program into a series of smaller built form, which is really driven around being as kind of human-centred and textural as possible, with lots of consideration, of course, around inclusiveness, the social enterprise that operates on this site brings with intellectually and physically disabled people. So travel distances to toilets, incredible accessibility, changing places on site, but also just septet. This is a catalyst for a riverfront that otherwise has a lot of vandalism, rough sleeping, so making sure that there was a kind of transparency and passive surveillance. These three buildings are all made out of hempcrete. They're the first public hemp masonry buildings in Australia, the result of years of R&D for our practice, and I guess really trying to find a new architectural language that suits this new material, ancient material being newly discovered. Oh my god. Which looks like this. Externally, skipped one. So it's really this play of mass, skeleton and skin. So rusted skins that are reclaimed from site, luminous skins and transparent skins. Both internally and externally, on an extremely lean budget, we've had a nod to the industrial, but also introduced a kind of textural density to reward the senses. The next big idea is a shift from formal to informal. So the master plan set out a village frame that had quite a rectilinear formality to it. That Eurocentric notion, sort of terminology and typology was dismissed early on in consultation with the broader community and the Aboriginal community. And there was really an attempt to make sure that we had this sense of fluid kind of slippage across the site. It's pragmatic in that there's no front, there's no primary arrival point. This place needs to change according to community demand and development in the next 50 years. So we've used the least built form possible to try to demarcate zones across this site. I'll go really quickly now. Internally too, there's a flexibility and a permeability. So this is the powerhouse closed down with each of its discrete spaces functioning separately, but through operable walls and all those curtains they can connect. The last idea really is about the precinct needing to work from above. So this is the escarpment, the approach from the city. From at grade, of course, the low grade from the riverfront, and you can just see in the distance the bridge to New South Wales. So it has to work up close and at a great distance. So this really drove this idea of a roofscape, which we talked to the local community about, and then really got, because of the heat, as a language of hats. So different hats doing different kinds of things. The boiler house is vast and scaly. It wears the rusted roof sheet of the powerhouse building, repurposed. The toilet building has a little cap so that there's open sky that marks that as one of the key entry points as you descend from the city. And the cafe has a dramatic sawtooth roof that kind of holds a much greater territory for a small building and acts as a beacon when backlit at night to say something is happening here, come and see. Okay, and really briefly, what is happening here we think is, and our council agrees, is the community kind of interacting with and seeing each other and regaining a sense of self through this place. So it's much less about the consumption of community on show that I guess the original pitch to government set out. And at the opening, the Mayor declared that Mildura finally had its Fed Square, and so with great apologies to Don and Co, I think that really does demonstrate that this is